Thank you.
Okay, hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Holding Talks. Holding Talks is a platform for engagement, most importantly for experience sharing. And this theater art segment of it is usually in collaboration with the National Association of Nigerian Theater Arts Practitioners, because it's not only art practitioners that get to come on this, platform. Also, we have conversations with politicians as well and business persons. Our last guest was the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, whom we engaged on what is in store for Nigerians should their party get to become the winner of the presidential race, and especially for the arts sector. So today, against the background of the recently, premiered play from the stables of Dukes of Somolu Productions, titled Emir Sanusi, Truth in Time, we have the pleasure of bringing to us today no less a person than our own father in the arts, in the theater, Professor Ahmed Yerima, who not only wrote, but directed that play. And as you will see with the title of this, this conversation today, we are looking at theater as history. And if you are following the trajectory of Professor Yerima, you will also find out that this is not the first time Prof is staging or writing or directing an historical play. And especially this very one is of great importance in the sense that the personality who was the center of attraction in that play is one that you either want to love or hate. But like the title itself says, we need to put truths. We need to put facts in perspective. Unfortunately, many of us probably didn't get to see the play because it was only staged in Abuja and Lagos. I came so very close to it up till the eve of production, and then on the day of production, something else happened and I missed that opportunity. But the feedback about Emir Sanusi has been great, which is the reason we are here today. And I'd like to welcome Professor Ahmed Yerima into our fold. And then to get started with this very simple question of asking Prof, what is the place of theater in history?
I thank you for the question. I also thank you for the invitation. But I would like to say, what is the place of history in theater?
Oh, good.
Why? Because theater exists. I see theater as an everyday thing. It's born with us, it lives within us, and it's there. And all we have done is in different forms, we have tried to formalize it and say, okay, this is the kind of theater we want to do. But life itself is theater. And so for me, the place of history in theater, or theater in history, like you say, is a form of documentation, a form of retelling, a form of storytelling, trying to recreate a past happening in life, trying to recreate it as a dramatic event. And so that's where I say history in theater, theater in history, either way. But it's that is it, trying to recreate a happening that has taken place in dramatic form, in storytelling form. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'll follow up immediately to ask this very question. I remember reading an article about, what's his name again? There was this play by Henrik Ibsen, which Arthur Miller had to do an adaptation of it. And in terms of change, in terms of whatever input he made to the existing play, it was not really very much. He maintained the title, he maintained the plot, and almost all of. And then in that article, he was asked a question, and he was asked why he didn't give as much credit to the original play. I think Enemy of the People is the play by Henrik Ibsen. And he said, well, for all he cares, this is his play, even though it's an offshoot of another play. And so the question I want to ask in this respect is that when writing dramatizing a story that is true life, how much of fidelity, how close to the exact history should it be?
And 1B.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, good. How much, please finish it.
I meant that how close should it, okay, like in this case, is the story of Emir Sanusi. How much facts and how much fiction are involved in this story, for instance?
Well, the good thing is that we don't have many great Ibsen in Nigeria yet. And also we don't have many great Arthur Miller.
No, it's not very audible.
We don't have many great Arthur Miller yet. And so what you find is we have history, we have the story, and then we also have the playwright's intention. The major problem I have usually with Nigerian historical plays is that the owners of the history are always so personal. They want to protect the history. And so when you are coming to it, you have to be very careful with the use of that kind of material. You find yourself trying to be very careful with what the others may think about it, and so it becomes a problem, especially for the playwright. But when I come to use history, I'm usually very dispassionate. I do not have any emotional attachment to history. What I do with history is history forms the basis for me. It gives me the materials, but I come in with my own interpretation. And what determines the interpretation for me is the society that I'm writing for. And so I say, what would they like to hear? What would they like to see? I mean, what I also find about Nigerians and history, maybe the African society and history, is their protection and the need for them to project a particular side of the history that they have in mind. And that's why, like when I was writing Amebuni or writing Atahiru, and you find that the people themselves already have decided on, please, can you project our grandfather in this way, or project, and most of the time what I write is totally different from what they see. So history guides me, but at the end of the day, it's Ahmed Yerima who uses the materials from history. I remember when I wrote Amina, Queen Amina, what I did was, I said, look, placing Amina within the 21st or 22nd century coming, people will ask the questions, why would a woman, general, be killing her lovers, a man who sleeps with her all night? Why would she behead him the night before? And at that point, I'm beginning to say, what is the use of history for me? And how am I going to tell my children and my grandchildren about this type of emotions and this type of history and this type of, and so I'm trying to find meanings, new meanings to history most of the time. Thank you.
Okay, sir. For those of us who are on this platform, as you know how we do it, it's not just about me asking, it's all open. If you need to ask Prof anything, this is a conversation. So feel free to indicate and then you can ask. However, I'll go straight forward and ask another question. Even though we are talking about Emir Sanusi, before we go into Emir Sanusi itself, I'd like to ask in view of your response now to say that this protection of the people's attitude to the history, the protection, the sentiment attached to these histories like you just mentioned, how much of it was the case in the case of your play of Orame Nogbaise? Because for us, engaging that play, there is the Olarotime version, and then there is your version. And for me, this is an opportunity to clear one of these stories making the round, which says that, okay, the Benin Kingdom was not satisfied with Olarotime's version, which is independent, and so wanted you to tell the story the way they want it. Is this the case, sir, or can you help us put this in perspective?
I think the great Olarotimi even misunderstood what happened and was upset with me till death. I've tried to make up for it, but it's very difficult to do that. One, because the other party was not there and he had formed his own opinion.
Yeah.
But the thing was basically is the common sense and the logic of what happened that Olarotimi could not understand. One, the father of then Oba Eredua, Oba Akenzwa, had commissioned Olarotimi himself and had asked him to write Overawen Ogbaisi. And at that time, Olarotimi was coming from basically a Greek understanding of the king, the Oba of Benin. And so he wrote a great play, which is, I'm too small to compare my play to Olarotimi or as a person or as a playwright. And so he wrote a great play, but which showed Ovorawe as a tragic hero in the Aristotelian concept of it. To the Bini people, the Oba of Bini is not a tragic hero. He's a god, whether we like it or not. Yeah. And so when they praise him, they say the king who decides the day, and decides when he wants to smile, decides when he wants to kill, or not, you know, it's a great, he doesn't even eat food, according to them. He eats chalk like a deity. And so when you now write a play and place it within the issue of purgation, peripetia, which Aristotle said you should place a king, automatically you have a problem. Yeah. But at that particular time, it was what the Oba wanted. And for each king, the desires are different. The Yorubas say Oba Mewa Igba Mewa. Yeah. And so when his son, Oba Eredua, took over, 100 years had passed from 1897 to 1977, I think, and 1987. And what they did was they needed a play. In fact, with due respect to Professor Bayodune, was then artistic director, you're asking me to clear the air, and to clear the air, I must name names. Yeah. We had gone to Benin and we had bought all the copies of Overawen Ogbaisi. We had even spoken to Olarotimi about it, and he was ready to be co-opted in as a co-director to Bayodune. But when we got to the palace with our copies in the boot, and all we needed was just costumes from the Oba and some historical facts to just support Olarotimi's play. We were told that the Oba was not interested in Olarotimi's play, and that the Oba wanted a new play. And we were to bring a new playwright who would write the play. and were sent by the federal government because the Oba of Benin had written to the federal government and asked them to send someone that will collaborate between the Benin Kingdom and the federal government on this play. And I think my boss then, who was the artistic director of the national troupe, Mr. Bayo, just turned and said, look, Ahmed, you are a playwright, write this play. And we told Prince Endo Akenswa that Professor Yerima would write the play. And I said, excuse me, sir, what do you want? Because the play has already been written. The Oba has refused to see us concerning this play. What do you want in your play? And he said, good, this is what we want. We want 100 years has passed. The Oba is ready to forgive all the chiefs who had a hand in who people perceived as those who put the Oba in a tight spot by killing the white men. That's led by Chief Ologoshere. The Oba wants a renewal, a rebirth, and he wants a reconciliation. And when you look at Olaritimi's play, these were not the issues raised in Olaritimi's play. And so I now said, okay, do you have materials? And they said, yes. And they gave me the materials, which up to the handwritten court judgments, court proceedings of what happened in court at that time. And so I took the materials and went to Geneva. I was going to Geneva the following week. And that was when I came back with the play. I wrote the first 2-page scenes of the play. And then I was beginning to look at the play and looking at the needs. And that was when I realized that society actually demands for the kinds of play that it gets at a particular time. What are the uses, especially when it's historical play, and when the main characters are as great as Obo Vorawe, and the people are as great as the Edo people who do not play with their culture. And this was what happened. And so when the play came out, but at that time, quite the pressmen had gone. Most of them are my best friends, and I had gone to Olaritimi and told him, "Can you believe that young brat wanted to write a play, forgetting that the owners of the history own the story, and therefore they can have different versions of the play." About that time that I was even writing my own, someone had been commissioned to write in Edo language another version of Muvorawe. And so, again, we need to understand when we use historical materials that history belongs to the people. And it depends on your interpretation as a playwright at a particular time to say, this is what I want to use this history for. And this is what my society would like to hear at that particular time. So that's it. I didn't have anything there. I always like a quote of Olaritimi saying, where he said, that small boy we showing cast boy, say he know how to write play, and make him put waiting the head for ground, make we see him. And I took that up, and it has become a quote in my life. When I see a small boy, it allows me to respect, because I now went on to write a play. And ironically, it was his play that made my play great, because people were now doing studies. Sir, can we interview you? I'm writing on my PhD on a comparative study between Olaritimi's Uvorawe and your Uvorawe. And the more they did that, people had to read my play. So it was a sellout at the particular time. So I'm grateful to him forever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Prof. If there is still no one on the platform who needs to ask a question, I'll go on straight to Emir Sanusi. What inspired?
Sorry. Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. This is Abia Gertrude Machunga from Lafia, sir.
Yes. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you doing, sir?
Fine, thank you.
Great to see you once again, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, it's like a follow-up to the question that you were trying to answer.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, could you please elaborate on society demands for the kind of play it needs? I didn't quite catch that. Maybe you could elucidate a bit, sir.
Yes, society does. Because at a particular time, things that are relevant to society at a particular time, you find are not relevant to another society. Because society is not static, like Raymond Williams said, it continues to move. And yet, therefore, its needs are also moving and changing. And you find, I remember, I learned that the reality came to me when I wrote Atahiru, which is a historical play. And I was asked, it was Millennium Play for Nigeria, and I was asked to write a play. And I wrote Atahiru. And when I was reading the story, the problem Nigeria has had at that particular time, up to that point, was we were told that Nigeria never fought for its independence, and that why we do not value our independence was because we didn't fight for it.
Yeah.
And as I did the research and I was reading on Atahiru, I found that we fought for it. And I think that was why my attention was drawn to that. And I found that, yes, the man was the Sultan of Sokoto for only 6 months, and he was a Muslim scholar. He was not a warrior. And yet he confronted Lord Lugard and his men, and he said, look, I'm telling you, you cannot just come and take over my place, you know. And they drove him, and as they drove him, he ran until he got to Bauchi, a place called Brumi. And there he fought the people, and he was killed along with his 100 soldiers. But whether we liked it or not, I had enough evidence now to show that Nigeria had fought for its independence. And I now knew why the topic was chosen. Nigeria wanted to say something. Nigeria wanted to say that, look, we fought for our independence. We are not a country that did not understand what independence was. And so we stopped being silent. And I think when I met his great-great-grandson, the late Sultan Machido, that was the same thing he asked me. My great-great-grandfather only ruled for 6 months. My father, Abubakar, ruled for 50 years. Why are you not writing a play on him? Why on a king who ruled for 6 months? And I came up with, sir, it's not how long you stay on the throne, but it's what you do while on the throne that matters. Your father ruled for 50 glorious, peaceful years. And so I have nothing to talk about. Historical plays are plays used to mark significant happenings at a particular time, and to explain from the point of view the contemporary feelings of a particular period. And so when I wrote Atahiru, it had registered for me. And as the audience watched it, including the then President Obasanjo and his deputy, Atiku, I said, look at them, look at, I hope they take away from here the sense of unity, the sense of understanding that there is a need for Nigeria to forge along and to be together. That, you know, and that was the statement that Ahiru made. And so I was not surprised within 2-3 months of publication, it had gone into the, what's it called, the WAEC syllabus, because it also meant that the teachers who were responsible for choosing the WAEC place at that time realized that the Nigeria needed such place at that particular time. That's what I mean when I say that the society demands for the kind of, you know, yes. Thank you.
Okay, Living Green, you have your hands up. Can you go into this?
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Yeah, so my question is, you know, you mentioned earlier when you were speaking that one of the things you've noticed is that Nigerians or African writers, they tend to want to, you know, the way they project the stories, they tend to want to tell one side of the story, especially from social media, get their own side of the story. So I'm wondering, isn't it conflicting when you say that, and then when you now say, okay, that society demands the kind of stories you want to tell? I feel like it's conflicting. So how do you know? How do we now know which story is true? I mean, the essence of writing this historical thing is to know, to discern which one is true, and then write maybe as truthfully as possible. So if society, if you say society, Nigerians want to write it in this particular way aspect, and then society demands to write this particular way, I don't know. It's kind of conflicting for me. So
Yes, it's conflicting because life itself is conflicting. The major problem, major problem I have is the historic history tells you a story. And what I've found out as the owner of the history always have a way of wanting to protect their side of the story, their side of the history. They want you to know. If I remember when I was writing Novora and all the Bini houses who were involved in the story would come to my hotel, Saidi Hotel in Benin, and they would say, are you the government man? I would say, yes. Please see, we want to tell you about our father. He was a great man. I found everybody's father was a great hero. And I now said, then whose father was a coward in this society at the particular time?
yeah.
If everybody's father was a hero.
Mm.
And so you find the sense of protection of the historical entity that belongs to a particular people, it becomes a problem. Even when I was writing about Jaja of Ukpopo, the family said, write about King Jaja and show him as a great man. And then when I went into the history, I found a different person. I think the first problem here is we must understand that when a playwright is coming to a story is a history is just a story. It tells you a story, and the first you need to know. If I have a very interesting encounter, the man who wrote the history of Atahiru, when I finished the book, the play, I published it, and then there was a historical Northern Nigerian history conference, and I had to write. I had to present a paper, and I took copies of the play along and distributed it. And the man who wrote the history of who wrote the book the history that I read, that was one of the books I read to write the play, saw me at the breakfast table, and he said, "Liar." And I said, "Liar? That's a big word to call me. Sorry, I don't know you." And he said, "I'm Professor So." I said, "Well, I'm Professor Say, I know who you are. You wrote that play." I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, the major problem I want to tell you is, first, Atahiru didn't die the way you said he died. He died a coward. And I said, "Well, yeah, but were you there?" And he kept quiet. And he said, "But were you there too?" I said, "No, I was not there. You were British. You wanted to show the world that we were cowards and we were stupid. And so he chose a valley and he was killed with 100 people. And I'm writing a millennium play for my people. And I don't want my grandchildren to say that Atahiru was a coward and stupid, to see the picture which you presented." And so you find that this is what I mean by the society and the responsibility of the playwright. That at a particular time, the playwright must be responsible to the society. He tells his story. Stories, and I think that's the whole idea. Even if you look at the stories of the tortoise that I was told, if I tell you one and I tell you the lesson, I found that by the time my children went to primary school, the stories, the teachers themselves had changed the theme, the reasons why the story were, the one that taught us not to steal, taught them not to what's it called, be envious of people. And so the thematic essence and relevance and thrust of a particular play depends on how a playwright uses this plays and the stories that are created by society. And it is what the society now does. And then I'm going to bring another contradictory statement. That when you write about the people, the history of a people, and they reject that play or reject what you have written about them, then you have failed as a playwright. Because you must use the history of a play, of a people, in such a way that the people are able to relate to it. And the only way they can relate to it is the contemporariness, how contemporary the story is to them at a particular time. Most people don't want to understand what you have written about Sanusi. Most Nigerians don't even like it. In fact, some people think you were wasting your time. Some think I just wrote the play in order to look for fame or money or something from him. And I never met him. I just saw a line in his bio, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to know why he said it, and that was why I wrote the play. And he didn't. He said even when he got the script, he didn't read it, but it made him cry, and so that made me understand that if the playwright uses materials very well, then he can achieve the effect that he wants to achieve.
Thank you so much, Prof. I have Patrick Chud Ote, Dr. Pat. You can unmute from your end, sir.
Yes, I think I've done that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Prof. How are you doing, sir?
Fine, thank you, sir. How are you, Doctor?
Very well, Prof. Very well. Prof, I want to find out from you, how much of a conflict do you have when you're writing these historical plays? I know you are a theater director, and at the same time, you are a master playwright. Now, where does the conflict come up, especially in the area of reconstruction? How would you reconstruct something that happened 10 years ago, or let me say 100 years ago, just opposing it with something that happened, say maybe 50 years later during the reign? How does this conflict, how does it play out in your writing, sir?
I think at two levels. First, when I want to write a play, I go, is it metaphysical and spiritual, a historical play? And what makes me interested in a historical character, very weird things, very, very interesting things. Like when I wrote Ame Boni, I was more interested in why would a king commit suicide? Why would a king with all the powers, especially being born in Yoruba land, growing up in Yoruba land, and I was told that the Oba is a Keji Orisha. He has power over life and death. And then he takes a rope on his neck and commits suicide with all that power. And I said, why would a king do that? What forces a king to kill himself? And what made me write Sanusi is when the man says on his coronation day, oh Lord Allah, I want to die the emir. I want to be carried from the palace to my grave. Why would he say that? You know, men say things that you begin to wonder, great men, especially historical figures. They say things that you begin to say, look, was this guy saying? Was he normal? Did he know what was going to happen? Why would he say that? And so first, when I've sorted that out in my head, which I never sort out until when I write the end, the last word, end, E-N-D, I then begin to say, what kind of human being was he? And once I begin to sort those out, and how can this character, what haunted Jaja of Okpobo? Why was he so wild? Why was he so angry? Why was he so? And I discovered that a man who has been taken from his mother at the age of 12 and sold into slavery. And for me, I found each time I was reading his life story, he was a slave from the beginning to the end. Even when he was released and they said they were taking him back to Nigeria, he was still a slave. And so I begin to look at that, the psyche of a man, the psyche of the historical figure. And then I now begin to say, okay, Ahmed, how do you sort this out within the story of this person? And then I conjure the person. And this is the playwright now talking. I conjure the person within my own consciousness. And I say, this is what I want to do with him. And when I do that, I now come into reality. And I say, as a playwright, now writing. And when I'm writing, the good thing is I write as an actor and as a playwright. So what does not work for me as an actor when I'm writing cannot work for me as a playwright. And so when I write the lines, I read them. And when it doesn't work, I can find one word as a problem, a word like eat or a word like and. And I try and find out until it becomes plausible. When I accept that, it's when I now begin to create that character. And then when I create the character, I want to create a human being that I can relate to. If I can't see him, I can't write him. I must see the character. I tell you, there's a scene I was reading when I was writing Ovurame, and I wrote to a point where the Benin's were coming in. And so I went back to the book I was reading. A lot of research goes in. And then I now said, okay, how do I get this done? Because in the book, the man says for 3 kilometers into Benin, human flesh that had been used for sacrifice was smelling. And I got angry, not at myself, but at Ovora. I was so angry that how can you kill your people who should have helped you to fight the war? And you were killing them before the white man came. Who would defend you? And I went to sleep. And in my own consciousness, in my own mind, Ovora came and told me, Ahmed, you must be joking. If you are a king, you give up anything. And I put those lines so succinctly well in the play, where he says, I will do, if Benin wants my head, I will give it. If they want my soul, I will give it. For Benin, I will do this. And so when you begin to come to that, you sort out those contradictions. But I think the element of writing a historical play is by being sincere with the historical materials you gather. It's difficult not to take sides, but you must not take sides. Because if you take sides, then it becomes easy. There are people who are very, the other day, they are very cynical. The fact that they hear that you're writing about Olusegun Obasanjo and you're calling it Aremu, they'll say, oh, this guy is looking for money, he's looking for that. But when you are sincere with the story, then a great man like Obasanjo would cry because he sees the sincerity of your play and he begins to understand what it's all about. And I think there's a statement which Emir Sanusi made, which made me cry, where he said, my friends who watched this play with me in Abuja told me that this is something that normally happens to you when you are dead. And you must be privileged for you to be watching yourself alive and seeing what you did, and then realizing what you said and realizing what you did. And I think what he didn't want to say is to realize the good things I did and the mistakes I did and I made. And so it allows you to go, and then you find that what Aristotle was saying was right. That if the play is done, the purgation, the process of purgation can be achieved, especially with the living. Even when the person is alive and he sees himself and he says, is this me? He will cry. And that way he purges himself. There is that process of purgation, which is a process of peripetia, which Aristotle talks about. And so when you look at that, it becomes easier for you to understand what that process we're talking about. Why the playwright is sincere, must be sincere when writing. When the actor is playing it, he must carry it through so that the sincerity becomes a persona which the audience watch, and that is what they take away from the play. And so that's it. In fact, what reminds me, and each time I talk about historical plays, is Amebuni. The Oba is late now, the son of Amebuni the Great. He is Amebuni II. And the rule is once a king commits suicide, his lineage is cancelled. And so he was never to be a king. And then the National Troupe did the play, where Professor Oduneye directed the play and brought the play. They brought the play to Abuja, and he saw the play. And he got my number and he called me, and he was in tears. And he said, look, there is something I never understood, why my father committed suicide. But tonight, I saw him, and you explained to me why my father committed suicide, and I forgive him, and I accept it. And I think at that point, I started to cry. I was grateful that I was used to tell that story, to explain it to his family. And when he became king, I was the first person he called. Unfortunately, he died the day I now called him back, 7 years or 8 years after he became king. But the major problem was the story, the sincerity of use of information and use of materials in order to achieve a thematic intention, which is not from a very selfish point of view, no, not from a very protective point of view. Always helps me when I write a historical plays. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pat, any follow-up or should continue?
Oh, for now, I rest my case.
Okay, so Prof, in view of this, maybe I should just ask this what I will call a passing question. In view of all the explanation you have given us, today, which we cannot get in 4 years of classroom, I want to ask, which is much easier to engage? Writing an historical play from an independent point of view, making your own research, or writing an historical play commissioned, for which most of the time, those who commission it have the perspective from which they want you to write for?
I think, again, it depends, but I'm a very unpredictable playwright. So even if you pay me millions to write a play, what you will see is totally different. And most times it's totally different from what you expect to see. One, because I am very passionate about my art. And I know that days like this will come where I will be questioned. You know, I'm sure you would not have invited me if at every play that I write, the winner takes all. The man is a great man, the man is a wonderful man, and then you say, oh, no, Yerima is just a commercial playwright. And since I'm not an Alagbe, there's a problem. But the story of the person determines the kind of thing that I eventually write. And so it becomes very difficult for me. I've had a family, I tell you a very quiet one. A friend called me and said, please, the Oloboshere family want you to write a play. Since you wrote Ovorawe, they also want you to write Oloboshere, who was the only man who was hung after Ovorawe was taken to Calabar. And I said, okay, no problem. And I said, all right, let me write the play. And then I now started doing my research and finding out the reason why they hung him and the reason why the Oba was very angry, why the Benin people were angry with him, and what happened. And as I wrote the play, I found that I was not writing a play that would praise the Oloboshere family. And I said, in my mind, would these people at the end of the play accept this play? And at that time, and I think that's the only play that nobody has paid me for, because what they eventually read was not what they wanted. They wanted me to bring a play that would show their grandfather as innocent, and that he was wrongly killed, and the white men had no right to do that. The Benin had no right to hate them. But what came out from the historical materials, because the historical materials determine what emerges from the play. And when they read it, nobody has told me. In fact, they had first told me, please, we would want to own the play. It has to be written by Oloboshere family and Ahmed Yerima. But when they read the play, I think they just said, let's leave this crazy man and his play go. You understand? Because he does not praise our father, our grandfather. He's critical about him. I mean, how can this man write such a critical play? And it's there. And if you watch what's it called? Emir Sanusi, you would find it there too. I'm very critical about him. And I didn't praise him for 1 second. In fact, he said, the problem with our Emir is he read too much book. And when too much book is not good, it makes even the head of an Emir turn. And so when he hears that, he knows that the problem. And then when he says, he even sent his daughter to represent him at a meeting of clergies, and they say, a noose. He tied the noose on his own neck. You understand? And there's a place where he says, how can people take the title given to him by Allah? And he said, the man said, was it Allah who gave him? Man gave him, and in anger, man. And so you find that the critical nature of the play itself allows you to look at it. In fact, even Obasanjo, I said the man is not perfect. Don't mind him. And in anger, the character gets angry and turns to the audience and says, are you perfect? You, Mr. Man sitting there, are you perfect? And the audience could not answer. And yet the whole audience were those. Even he asked Obasanjo, are you perfect? And that was shook his head. No, I'm not perfect. By then, tears were on his eyes. Because this was a question which Obasanjo, because everybody goes, oh, he knows too much. He thinks he's the god of Nigeria. And so when the play confronts the audience and confronts the owner of the history of the story, it becomes something that goes beyond play, and it allows the audience to be able to say, okay, maybe we were a bit too hard. And what it did, and especially in Lagos for the Emir, was I allowed the Emir to come out of his shell. I'm sure after it happened, they were saying, Your Highness, don't say anything about Nigeria. Nigeria is too hot now, And then he now saw an independent playwright, somebody he never knew. He didn't know me from Adam. I met him for the first time a day before the performance in Abuja. And we took a photograph, which I'll cherish for life. And he just looked at me like, who the hell is this guy who sits down and writes a play on me? He said, I have not read your script, so don't think that, And he said it. I didn't read this play. I didn't commission it. I don't know anything about Joseph Edgar. And so, but this is how I feel. And I cried. Yerima says, no, emirs do not cry. I cried twice. You understand? And so that's the kind of thing I'm looking at when I write plays. I want the play to touch the conscience of the society. I want the play to be elevated to a point of discussion so that we become more critical about what we are talking about and who we are. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Prof. Richard, you had your hand up. Richard?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, Richard. Yes.
Okay, good morning, Prof.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Jerry.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I am happy to be here. And this is the first time I'm being on holding talks.
Oh.
So, but for Emir Sanusi,
Yes.
I have a lot of questions, or I had a lot of questions, because I was in the team, in the technical team that set up the production. So in Lagos, so I saw the play. I was going to ask before Prof explained about the play being commissioned, because I saw the Emir's reaction after the performance, and it got me thinking, was this play commissioned? And also looking at the whole performance and production, and Prof writing plays, these historical plays, he has written a couple of them, and more is coming up. The Sardana is coming October. So I wanted to ask, what informed or what prompts you to write these historical plays now? Thank you.
And thank you very much for the free advert you gave Sardana. I was going to come there. Now that you have joined it, Richard, I'm very happy. I think what informs me is a gap, an urge. I say, okay, I look at the story of someone and I say, okay, this is it. I looked for Sardana, I looked at the interviews, the two interviews he gave, especially the one on the Igbo people and then the one on the Yoruba people. And I looked at the interviews of Awolowo on the Hausa people. And I looked at the interviews of, in fact, the speech of Azikiwe, these great men of our time that gave us the national independence. And I started saying, no, I think out of all these people, Maybe we misunderstand Sadowna. Maybe Sadowna himself, maybe didn't even understand the depth of the position that he occupied at that time. Maybe and that's what sets me writing. Once I say maybe, and I've made up my mind of maybe, I begin to say why. And then when I begin to say why, and I'll say, so what do I tell my people? What do I tell the people about this guy? And once I've done that, the story begins to unfold. And I begin to read and watch, and thank God for YouTube. Whoever created YouTube, God bless you, because you made my reading easier. And then I begin to say, okay, how do I explain these issues to myself? And then I see tapes of 60s, 50s, 40s, and I see the person talking back to me. And I begin to say, okay, this is what is going on. And it becomes easier for me to place the person within contemporary history. And so it is an urge. Sometimes the society demands for it. Sometimes what the person says, like in Emir Sanusi, demands for it. And sometimes I remember my first meeting with General Obasanjo, Chief Obasanjo, before I wrote a word of the play, Aremu. And he said, so what, they say you want to see me. Why do you want to see me? Well, what, I don't want any play to be written about me. What do you want the play to be? You know? And he thought he was going to use General Soboju on poor me. And I said, sir, let me tell you, a lot of people know who you are, but they don't know the person. I want to write a play that will tell my grandchildren that there was a great man who walked through this country and ruled us twice. And this was what he did, and this was what he did. I'm not interested in those titles of Olo. I want to strip you. I want to turn you to a human being. I want people to see you as a human being. So he said, okay, all right, sit down. If that's the way you want to see, you know. And he sat down, and I sat down next to him, and we started talking. And I think like Oba Eredwa, he read every line. He would mark the script, and he would tell me what, you know, he was taking me back to English 101. And he would read it, and he would put his ideas and tell me if I changed the whole song. And it was very nice, and I amended it. And so these are the kind of things that go a long way for me to allow the play to make sense, to want to write a play. And so the more he embraced the play, the more I found a need to write it. So my needs are usually brought up by the kind of persona that I meet when I'm doing the research, you know. And if I was like Judge of Okpopo when I wrote it, and my friend said, oh yes, now that we've written the script, I can raise money with it. I said, you can raise money, but you won't get a dime. And he said, why? I said, because everybody from your area is a Judge of Okpopo. And he said, no. And you know, so when he raised the first 50 million and he didn't get it, and he raised another money, he didn't get it. I said, I told you, you know, the Judge of Okpobo blood in all of you. Go. And he said, how? What do I mean? I said, go and read the play. And you know, because what I met in the play is different from the kind of person you created. You were talking of the great Judge and when I met the person, he was a businessman, and all he just wanted was to make his pounds and shillings. He didn't care whose ox was God. And so this is the kind of thing that makes me write a play. I want to be honest. It's difficult because the materials are coming from different angles. But by the end of the day, you want to tell a story that people will say, oh, yes, I understand now the reason why this play was written. And I understand why people reacted to it this way. And then that is where the genuineness of the play emerges, and the genuineness of the intention of whoever wrote the play. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Desmond? Please unmute from your end. Desmond. Hello, Desmond, are you with us? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please shoot.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good
please.
afternoon,
Hey.
Prof. Good afternoon. So yes, thank you very much. So I saw Emir Sanusi, and one issue that struck most to me is the Dogaris. So the story a lot of us are aware of who the Emir is here. A lot of people know his details, but we know his power.
Your audio is muffled.
Can you hear me, please?
Over.
We can't really hear you.
Yeah. Please start over.
Okay. Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Just right now is better.
Yes. So I was saying that I saw Prof. I saw Emir Sanusi, and I want to say, firstly, very great job, sir.
Thank you.
I think the main subject, the Emir, I think what struck me also is the Dogaris.
Yes.
I don't know if I pronounced it well.
Yes.
So I believe the Emir is well known, and so I felt it would be easier to get, if any, materials concerning the Emir. But for the Dogaris, I think that was the first time I heard that name. I got to understand. And from
Muffled again. Unfortunately, we could hardly hear you. Network, I'm sure we could hardly hear you. What do we do? Okay, Desmond, let me take someone else and see if by the time we return to you, your audio will be better. So, Living Green, please.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Prof. He's written something on, past leaders from Yoruba, Southwest, North, South. When is he going to do any on Southeast?
It is your turn.
It's your turn, and you look on. Well, I will get there. I will get there. What I love about the Southeast are not their leaders. I love their tradition and culture. and that, yes, I love because I love their traditions and cultures. So you will find me writing plays like Idemili, like Odeni Igbo, like Aquabata, like like Allah. You know, you will find me. Yes, those plays I have written them about my Southeast brothers and sisters, and I enjoy writing them. The requiem is also on the Southeast. I've written quite a number of plays on the Southeast, but the problem with the Southeast is they are too passionate about their heroes. I remember I was asked to write about Azikiwe, and I said no. And they said, write about Awolowo. I said, no. And they said, why, Prof? I said, you see, they have cult followership. And if I wrote a play on Azikiwe, no matter how beautiful and lovely it is, even though he grew up in Zungeru, they will come up and say, how can Ahmed Yerima write a play on Azikiwe? Nnamdi, the Owele of Fenicha, Undi Igbos, the outsiders have come. You understand? And so I told the producer, please get an Igbo man to write it, and I think they got one to write it. And then Awo too, they got Makinde to write Awo. I would write my own versions later that would be less critical, but I think I have done enough work, especially in the Niger Delta plays for them. So I can't write everything. I think you should write one. Write one.
That is why this sort of That is why this sort of engagement is important. I mean, so even in this conversation, we have learned a lot about, what it takes to write one. The elements, you need to look, it was interesting to me when you talked about the metaphysics.
Yeah, that's also what I wanted to ask him.
Yeah.
At what point in collecting and going through your research from both sides, both the praisers of the historian figure and those who criticized him, at what point do you come to the understanding of what kind of character you want to write? At what point does that sincerity come out, and then you write the character that you think this person is, and not just what both sides are offering you?
I think that's the question Desmond was trying to ask.
Okay.
I purposely kept quiet because I wanted him to finish so that I don't shoot myself in the foot. But now that his line is muffled, I think I can gear into it, and you have helped me by asking this question. For Emir Sanusi, I knew that it was a very delicate issue to write about. My wife was anxious for me, and I wrote it. And why, he kept talking about the Dogeris. Why did I write about the Dogeris? I wrote about the Dogeris because I didn't know what to do with Emir Sanusi if I brought him on stage. So I cheated. I needed to cheat, and I had so much gap. His grandfather had suffered the same fate, and he had suffered the same fate. The grandfather ruled for 10 years, and he ruled for 6 years. And I also wanted to know why. And I wanted to know their weaknesses. There are those I could pick up in my researches, but I wanted someone to talk with authority. I didn't want to bring a woman on stage because it will go against the Hausa culture.
Yeah.
That a woman comes on stage and starts saying, "Oh, my husband, the Emir says this." And so I wanted to also cheat. So I split Ahmed Yerima into two. And those are the two Dogeris, Dahiru and Sabiu. And incidentally, they do exist in my life, those two characters.
Wow.
In fact, they exist. I won't tell you what they are to me, but
we'll find out.
Yes, but in fact, I think for each rehearsal, what I did was I would tell them, my name is Ahmed Yerima, and the two characters we are going to meet here exist, and I will call Dahiru. And Dahiru will pick the phone, and he will say, Ranka Idede, I'll say Barka, and I will talk to them, and I'll say, this is Dahiru. And I'll say, yeah, Sabiu, I say, Sabiu, Lafia. And I will now say, you see that they are alive. So don't think that we're doing a play here. The play is as alive as the person we're going to talk about. And from that moment, they themselves understand that what I did was to use those two people to guide all my purposes. As long as it wasn't Ahmed Yerima saying it, but it was Sabiu Wando. And you couldn't say, oh, how could Ahmed know what happened during the time of Muhammadu Sanusi, and then come to know what happened during the period of Lamido Sanusi. And then I needed that. In fact, it was interesting when I first met him, the day I met him, and a gentleman had brought us in to meet him, his PA. And he said, what's the play about? And I said, it's about two Dogeri. He said, Dogeri? If the play is about me, what are Dogeris doing in there? And I said, it's the Dogeri of your grandfather, Muhammadu Sanusi. And he said, that's his son. That was his last born. And I looked at my right and I said, oh, you're going to see your father's Dogeri on stage. You understand? And I said, and your Dogeri? And he said, my Dogeri? Oh, okay, go on. And then he started to embrace the play. And I think from there, I hit him. And I wanted to show the humanity that these two people were human beings. They were brought up by people. And I wanted people who knew them. So when they make categorical statements, like if you think of your life, you would say, who knows you? You will say, my mom. But actually, there was an auntie in our house I don't really know her name, but she was called Auntie, and I called her Auntie until she died. And so you find that she knows you more than your father and mother put together. And she was always there with you in school, there with you at home, there with you. So she knows you. And in some, you find that on the day they die, the children end up burying them even more than they would have buried their fathers and mothers, because they just call them Nana or Mama, they give them a pet name. And so that's what I did with these two characters. I made them my pet names, pet human beings who would understand the characters themselves. And I was now able to step out and create an argument between them. I also wanted to relieve one of the pet projects and I think that's what made him cry, because there's a line there which says, so while I was up there following my Emir up and down, and he was discussing all those lofty messages about child abuse, women abuse, that we were living it in my house, you understand, and it would touch him, and most of the women who came to the first show which he watched in Lagos, where most of them, I think, must have come from that background. Either their aunties or mothers, or they themselves were going through it. And they were very vocal at a point. They were no longer smiling, and they were watching Zainab, the woman, and anything she did, they would laugh. They would go, they could determine that this was going through the hell we went through, or my mother went through, or my grand auntie went through. And so the play was sending messages, not only to the Emir, but to the women seated. And it was, that's it for me. That's it.
Okay, so is it right to say, because I didn't see the play, so what you're trying to say, is it that with the two Dogaris that you were using them as kind of like when I say pointer to the Emir, that while he was, say, pushing women, the women abuse and girls, all that, the people who were working with him were experiencing such things that he probably overlooked that as well. And then at the same time, also telling the stories of, okay, these things, women also involved, we are also experiencing this kind of thing, like kind of like a double-edged way of saying, okay, you did this, but then you overlooked certain things too, or maybe you didn't look more inwards or closer to whom we are doing.
If I answer it the way you want, then I'll be unfair on the Emir. I think the Emir had said these things, and he constantly says it. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, which means at a point he noticed that this kind of life was going on, and there was a need for us to change it. And what I wanted to show was the dramatic irony of saying, yes, it's wrong, but it's close to you. You understand?
Yeah.
And that, yes, while you were talking to us or talking to the politicians or talking to the elders, the chiefs and the big men, it was also happening amongst the poor people. And so, and I think that was what, and I wanted the play to say so many things. It would have been a boring play if all it did was come here to say, oh, Emir Sanusi, he was a great man, he was this, he was that, And for those who watch the play, even after the play, for the next 30 minutes, he was, what's it called? He was still talking about his lines, his works, his ideas, his attitude. And the people found out he had really not changed. He was just quiet. And what the play did was just to open the key, which he had shut up. And he said, I have not, I'm going to continue talking about what I'm talking about, his principles. And what I made the characters do was to leave out his principles, to leave out his words, his ideas. And so it made the play more complete. But I wanted the play because when you look at Emir Sanusi, he's still a living subject. And sometimes you even think that he has not achieved what God set him out to do, because there's a line he said, I was on stage with him, and he said, let me tell you, if I took to banking and rose to become governor, and I was a prince and I rose to become the emir, if I had been in politics, I would rise to become the president. I would aspire to be the president. And we all clapped for him. And I was in my mind saying, is he giving me pointer for part 2 of this play? Am I going to do Emir Sanusi part 2? You understand?
Yeah.
I think so. As his online prompted me, I feel the play also prompted him and made him understand that there was a need to do more and that these issues continue to occur. And it depends on how well we take it and how well we're going to find the answers to these questions. And it raised a lot of questions. And I think I must answer also. Please, Jerry, you have to allow me to do this.
Okay.
Because at the performance of Emir Sanusi in Lagos, he said this was more complete than the one I saw in Abuja. And he said, in a very interesting way, he said, oh, this is why things from Abuja leak. And I wanted to take the mic from him and explain to the audience why it was a shorter, abridged version. And written it in such a way that the emir comes on stage after the play has been performed. And what they did in Abuja, they were so excited and they saw him enthralled, and we had an MC who was overwhelmed, and immediately, he just jumped on stage and said, "Thank you very much, thank you very much. We now invite the emir to the stage. We invite the actors." And when people told me they are inviting you on stage, I said, "For what?" And the emir finished his speech. And when they gave me the microphone, I said, "What else am I going to say?" In my head, I was saying, "Your play still has 15 minutes to go." But how do I tell the emir? The pressmen had gotten the scoop they wanted. And so nobody was staying. As they were leaving, the play had ended. And so the play ended abruptly, 15 minutes to the end of the play. So when he now saw the complete work, he said, "Oh, maybe somebody cheated. Maybe they edited it." You understand? But that's you understand. And so I need to explain this because I don't know who is listening. It might just save my head because they will come up and say there were 2 versions. It was the same play, but when he spoke, after he spoke and cried, what else did we want to see? Everybody just got up and left because they thought the play had ended. So when the MC in Lagos, Yemi Shodimu, called me, I had to jump to the end of to the stage and tell Yemi, don't invite him. Read the questions and then tell them that he will come and answer them later. And when the play is over, bring him in, which was a correction of what the mistake we made in Abuja. So yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, as we begin to round, this off, I'd like to ask you, Prof, which of the historical plays would you probably say wish you had not written? Is there anyone? If there is, why?
That I have not written. The historical play that I have not written.
No, that you wish you had not written. Say like no.
None. None. Honestly, they all have their strength. I mean, when I wrote Tafida for Yaradua Center, it was something else. It was something because that's the first time I think his junior brother read the play and said, "I want to play my brother." You understand? I want to play my brother. And the audience were saying, look, and his family members were saying, "No, Yerima, don't let him, he will forget his lines. He will get carried away, he will cry along the line, and you get too emotional. He's not an actor." And so you'll find each play has had its own meaning. And it was lovely working with people like Shehu Shagari, the former president, who was the editor from the Caliphate to write at Tahiru, working with a great man like Edward Kenswa. And I had a historian as a minister then of Onagoro to write Uvura. And so you find the depth of each play and what it was used for at a particular time has a meaning. So I don't think I regret it. I'm looking forward now to going on stage to go and direct Sardauna. And I think that would be the greatest test for me, because he was a very controversial leader, a great leader to some people, a controversial man. And what I've tried again to do is to, I play on emotions there. And I'm hoping that more people will cry, which makes me, I'm beginning to enjoy it. You know, see people cry. I think it's your favorite play, Jerry, was a T2 that makes the audience cry. You know, I remember, yes, I remember going to Unilag and they said Tutti, and they said, say a word to the audience, and I turned to the audience and they were all crying. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. I promised next play, nobody will cry. And I knew I was lying. Yeah, you understand. But I'm going to play a lot on emotions. That's my keyword on Sardauna. And I've really enjoyed writing each play. And each play has been good to me. And the Nigerian audience, my critics, you, Desmond, Richard, Gertrude, or everybody, Patrick, you've been very kind to me to give me so much space. I think there's nothing like an old man allowed to dance when he thinks the music is good. Thank you.
Okay, so on the final note,
can I ask one more question? Can I ask one more question?
Okay, make it brief. There is also Richard whose hand has been up, and we have 3 minutes to go.
Yeah. Professor, this is a bit more personal, but as you write and you're coming towards the end of your life, have you figured out how to write about how you feel about that, like maybe about death and maybe some of the things you've realized while all this while you've been living?
Yes, in fact, death is it's a recurrent decimal in my plays, and death is a recurrent decimal. One, because I respect death. I love death because of its finality, but I'm afraid of it because of its finality. You understand? And,
yes.
and sometimes I believe that by the time I die, because we all have to die one day, I would have written less plays than the ones that I didn't write, because death puts a full stop on everything. It just stops you. You know, sometimes I'm pained when I say, oh, let me Google or find out, let me go to Wikipedia and talk and find out some information about my colleagues who are long gone. And I find what I have a very sketchy thing. And then I go to my own page and I find pages and pages and pages and pages. And I say, oh, one day they're going to dwindle into one page too. And so I write a lot about death. Death is a very, I love it. I love him. I call him her in Mujagbe. I say death must be beautiful for those great handsome men to follow him or her to go. And then in my other place, I say he's a tough guy who understands what it's all about. But when it comes to me, I think I like people to talk about my works when I die, and let the works speak for themselves. Because they are easy to read. I have a PhD student. I think she's writing from one university in Abuja, and she's writing on what's it called, on Yerima's women and so and politics and social, and so I sent her a copy, and she bought a copy of a book, and then she now said, can I have Pari? I sent her Pari, and then I sent her Heart of Stone, and then I sent her Hindu. And when she read about them, and each time she would say, I've read another one. Oh no, I'm so touched. And I said, these are the kind of people that I hope they will write a nice little sentence when I'm gone. Because we all go. I think there's no way to fight death. Death is there. It's, it will take you. You must take a rest one day.
So, Richard, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Clearly, please.
Yes.
Okay, Prof, I want to thank you. And then I'm saying this from a place of concern. I was in Emir Sanusi. In fact,
Yes.
when you talked about Tutti,
Yes.
I designed the production of Tutti that you said you talked about, you just talked about. Like
Yes.
I was in the production too.
Yes.
Now, my question or my concern, it has been there, but the production of Emir Sanusi triggered it more.
Yes.
Then the question is, I feel that theater practice in Nigeria, that is, in fact, I am having some quick papers that I'm already working on. Theater practice in Nigeria is in the academic environment and the commercial in practice. They are kind of practiced in isolation. And I feel we have to bridge the gap. There is a need to bridge the gap. That is town and gown, bringing together, because in the classrooms, what we tell the students and what we say is theater practice in Nigeria is on the decline. There is no audience. But then, Emir Sanusi, we refunded tickets to some people that couldn't get into the hall because the hall got filled to capacity, and the people that orchestrated the performances are Nigerians, and they are in the commercial theater practice. And productions has been going on in theater industry in Nigeria in the commercial field, and it's being successful. But the discussion in classroom is not the same. So I feel, or now I'm talking to you, at least as a professor in the arts, and you're in the academics, and you're getting involved in the commercial practice too. So isn't there a way, or isn't there something we can do to get to synergize and then have a kind of a symbiotic relationship between town and gown in theater practice?
Yes, I like your question. Well, it makes me feel very sorry for the academics, because the joke about being an academic is you become very smug, and you say, "Oh, I've done it all. I'm a doctor. I'm a professor. I don't need to dirty my hands with those people." And once you say that, then you begin to fall. And I think I was lucky because having worked with people like Shoinka, were teaching us how to do guerrilla theater in school, and then went to APU to go and learn how to do theater for development, and then went into national troupe, and which was taking place up and down the place, which Ogunde had set a tradition for, and so it became. It's difficult for me to sit still. You can see I'm in tie and suit as the provost of my PG school. But it doesn't stop me from closing and going to write my plays. Some of my colleagues think you are just going to kill yourself early, but they like the money you're making when they see you buying extra kilo of meat because you did Emir Sanusi, and then they now tag you. I don't mind him. He's a bourgeois. He's a bourgeois. He's a bourgeois. But they don't want to, and I think that's the problem. I think it's a disconnect somewhere where you find that the academic wants to be comfortable. He wants to be a fellow of NAL, Academy of Letters, not a fellow of SONTA. And SONTA would make you a fellow only when they've seen you really work. It's like Anna. They only make you a fellow or a member when you've shown them books that you've written. And so you must be relevant. And I think that's it. And that's where I must thank people like Edgar, Joseph Edgar, who started this madness of Duke of Somolu Productions. And in fact, for December here, he's doing about 5 plays. I've told him to count me out. I'm an old man. I need to rest after Sadauna. And then my sister in Terraculture, Austin Peters. Unfortunately, she's going to film now, which is painful for me. But we must, and then I think we must also come together. I know Jude Otte, this is where he has my respect. Yes, in Jos, all the time he's in Jos, logging it out. I was so happy when I saw pictures of him abroad, and I said, thank God my brother has gone on holiday. You understand? Because he's always working, you know, and I think these are the kind of things that we need. Jerry is also doing a great job.
Big one. He's empowering playwrights.
Yes, yes, our group, and it's always very interesting. So each time I see him, I say, I know your beard, your white beard, you're always giving me problems. You understand? And so young people like you, that is where I'm going. Young people like you may be the ones that own the theater in future. People like Fine Girl has already frightened me and told me about death, you know. But the good thing is, it's not the dead and the old who die alone, who die all the time, you know.
Prof, you are still here.
And thank you very much for saying that. That gives me courage. But you know, but the good thing about life is really, I think the young ones need to do it. You need to. You've seen what it is like. Emir Sanusi, you've worked with us. You've seen what it is, and I know. And like you say, you're doing papers on it, and so it will be easier for you to be able to get a few people together. And there are quite a lot of artists there. I wonder how, when we graduate people these days, I begin to wonder what this town and gown thing is really going to do. We really need the town and gown connection, where the people in the university, they all come out with lofty degrees, and then you say, what are you going to do with it? He says, my father owns a company. I'm going to do, we sell shoes in my family. And then you begin to say, oh my God, I wasted time teaching this boy dance 101, playwriting 201, you know. But I think one way when we get there, when we begin to sift how do we say this? Is it the seed from the shaft? And then we begin to find that those who are genuinely interested in theater are in theater. And I pray to God that He gives you the strength, gives us the strength. Since you've told me that I'm not dying so.
Amen.
Amen. Gives us the strength to continue working. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
As much as 90 minutes of your time, I know it's a lot. It's a whole lot. I mean, considering all the plays you are working on and other things, but we are glad you have honored us with this time. And I am sure that this is going to be one invaluable, edition of the Olden Talks, as people will get to, play back, listen to some of the things you have said, and begin to write. Because I agree, it is important to document our history, whether by poetry, or by play, or by any other means. But this time we're talking about theater, and you have been one, I mean, you're an institution when it comes to historical plays. And so the reason we have you here, thank you so very much. Dr. Jude Otte, Richard Undu, Professor Ismail Bala, Ugochukwu Ugo Abeha Gertrude, Living Green Desmond Okie, my Deputy President of NANTAB. I'm very glad to have you here. And so Dr. Olai Fatimeni is also here. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. And we'll come your way again very soon. It's a twice in a month edition we hold of the Holding Talks, twice within a month. Sometimes when we have issues to address, we do every week for as long as we have, the guests speak to us, but officially it's a twice in a month thing we do. So we look forward to seeing you next time around. Thank you. And we all look forward to that now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe. Bye, everyone.
Right.